At the beginning of the story, we see two scientists, Julia and Oscar, conducting experiments in a snowy region. Their work required placing explosives in icy waters and detonating them. While busy with this task, they received a call from headquarters, warning them of a dangerous storm heading their way. Julia and Oscar were told to evacuate immediately. Nearby, a Russian submarine detected strange, powerful sounds in the water. What shocked them most was that the ocean waves seemed to rise unnaturally from below. Julia's scanners began to malfunction, and the snow around their camp started breaking apart rapidly. Julia tried to gather her research papers before leaving, but the storm was too close. Oscar pulled her onto the snowmobile, forcing her to escape. Meanwhile, the submarine's captain realized the sound belonged to a living creature. Before they could react, a massive force struck the submarine underwater. At the same time, Oscar and Julia tried to flee across the cracking ice, but the ice broke ahead of them as well. Their snowmobile, their only means of escape, caught fire and sank. Soon, explosions destroyed their camp, and surviving scientists began drowning in the freezing waters. Inside the submarine, chaos spread as it shook violently from the attack. After some effort, the crew managed to fire a shot into the water, and the light revealed enormous tentacles. Before the submarine completely sank, an officer managed to send out an emergency message. The news of its disappearance quickly reached Russian Navy headquarters. Because the submarine carried powerful weapons, a rescue team was immediately deployed to either recover it or destroy it if necessary. This mission was placed under the command of Viktor, the brother of the stranded submarine's captain. His family was deeply worried that Viktor might also disappear, and his mother, filled with anxiety, gave him his late father's watch, saying, "This will protect you. Wherever your father is, he will watch over you." That night, when Viktor reached the base at Dogs, he discovered that his father's old friend, Admiral Olshansky, was also joining the mission. Viktor grew concerned, fearing the old man might not survive such a dangerous task. If Olshansky died, the blame would fall on him. As Viktor boarded the submarine, the crew members grumbled, upset about being recalled from leave so suddenly. Meanwhile, Julia and Oscar were still wandering in the snowstorm. While searching for a phone signal, Julia nearly fell into a deep crevice, but Oscar caught her in time. At that moment, her phone briefly connected to an oil rig. She quickly made a call, but the storm caused so much interference that the people on the rig couldn't understand her. Moments later, the signal dropped. Frustrated, Oscar fired a flare into the sky and sat down, exhausted. By morning, Viktor's submarine arrived near the area where the other vessel had disappeared. After preparations, they dived. The crew noticed that Olshansky had taken Viktor into a private room, where senior officers handed over a report that left everyone disturbed. Soon, rumors spread about the missing submarine. Elsewhere, Julia and Oscar discovered a buoy stuck in the ice. A buoy is a device that floats and sends signals to nearby ships. This gave them hope that someone would eventually find them, so they stayed there instead of wandering. When Viktor's submarine picked up the buoy's signal, they headed toward it. Suddenly, a group of whales began circling the vessel. The crew tried to avoid harming them, but one whale accidentally struck the submarine's screw. Olshansky ordered the sonar to be activated, though Viktor disagreed. Once the sonar switched on, the whales briefly swam away, only to return moments later in confusion. Then, without warning, they scattered. A strange low-frequency sound echoed through the waters, and the sea floor began to rise. Out of the darkness, a massive tentacle appeared, instantly killing a whale. The submarine's radar then signaled that an enormous creature was heading straight for them. Believing it might be an enemy ship, Olshansky ordered his men to fire. Viktor opposed this, and instead told the crew to hide. They steered the submarine into a narrow crack within an ice wall. The vessel shook violently each time it scraped the ice, and the radar's high-pitched signals made the crew's ears ache. Finally, the unidentified enemy passed, and the submarine stopped against a solid wall, forcing them to surface for repairs. At the same time, Julia and Oscar huddled against rocks, trying to keep warm, when the submarine suddenly emerged from the icy waters. The crew spotted the survivors and quickly brought them aboard. Though they weren't from the lost submarine, Viktor still listened to their story. Olshansky advised giving them food and leaving them behind, fearing they might be spies, but Viktor pitied them and let them stay. Once repairs were done, the submarine dove again and began searching near the buoy. After their medical checkup, Julia and Oscar were fed. Viktor then asked them about their camp and whether they had seen anything unusual. Julia recalled witnessing massive explosions, which Viktor believed might explain his brother's submarine sinking. The crew began planning their next steps, but Olshansky argued they should retreat. The creature on the radar could return, and if they were attacked again, sending an emergency signal might be impossible. But Viktor, determined to find his brother, ordered the submarine to Julia's camp. Olshansky warned him that this was the second time he had made a reckless decision, and a third mistake could be fatal. Viktor explained to his comrade that time was critical. If anyone in the missing submarine had survived, their oxygen would soon run out. Just then, Julia heard a strange noise, which Oscar explained was the sonar searching for the lost vessel. The radar soon revealed the creature was chasing them again. Viktor told the crew to find a hiding spot, but this time there was none. Their only option was an oil rig nearby. As they surfaced, the oil rig workers were horrified to see massive tentacles rising from the sea. Panic spread as the monster attacked the rig, tearing it apart with explosions and destruction everywhere. Workers tried to escape, but the collapsing structure left them with no way out. When the submarine lost contact with the rig, Viktor used the periscope to see what was happening. Terrified, he watched the monstrous tentacles demolish the rig and broadcasted the footage to the crew, showing them just how enormous their enemy was. Once the rig was completely destroyed, the creature turned its attention to the submarine. Olshansky accused Viktor of making his third mistake and declared that he would now take command. He ordered 2 torpedoes to be fired, and although they hit the target, the monster survived and grew even angrier. As the Kraken relentlessly pursued them, fear paralyzed Olshansky, and Viktor seized control again. He commanded the crew to push the submarine to maximum speed. They dodged most of the monster's attacks, but one tentacle struck, causing severe damage. Viktor hit his head and grew dizzy, while sparks and short circuits erupted inside. The submarine sank deeper, giving the monster another chance to attack. Suddenly, an explosion erupted in the missile compartment, starting a massive fire. The crew sealed the area, leaving 7 men inside to fight the flames. But another powerful strike from the creature forced the submarine downward. The radar confirmed that they were surrounded. That's when the crew finally recognized the truth. The creature was the legendary Kraken, a gigantic sea monster often written about in ancient tales, said to be an enormous form of an octopus. Now, with only 1 missile left, the crew knew they had to use it carefully. As panic spread, Viktor suggested switching the submarine to silent mode. Because marine animals usually hunt by sound, the workers inside the torpedo room were forced to stop fighting the fire. As a result, the levels of carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide began rising dangerously. Fortunately, Viktor's plan worked, and the Kraken finally moved away. The crew quickly resumed their efforts, but by then the fire had grown too strong to be controlled with a few extinguishers. Flames engulfed the compartment, burning some crew members alive. Viktor ordered everyone to evacuate immediately, saying, "Let it burn, just save your lives." Several officers were badly injured while escaping, but with help from the others they managed to get through the door. At the last moment, the compartment was sealed shut to stop the fire from spreading. Eventually, the blaze was extinguished by adjusting the pressure in the torpedo chamber, something impossible to do while people were still inside. Afterwards, those who were unhurt were assigned repair duty, while the injured were taken to the infirmary. Oscar and Julia assisted in treating them, earning the trust of the crew. Later, Viktor asked everyone what they should do next. Most agreed they should return home, since they didn't know the other submarine's location and had no defense against the Kraken. Olshansky reminded Viktor of his father, a hero who died saving others in a submarine disaster. After long thought, Viktor agreed it was wiser to turn back. As the submarine began its return journey, he read the last letter his father had written. Soon after, Julia entered his room and asked for a map and marked the locations where the Kraken had appeared, as well as her camp. She explained that, according to old stories, this creature had attacked ships long ago before mysteriously vanishing. Many scientists believed it had gone into a deep sleep, but Julia suspected the recent explosions may have disturbed its hidden home, awakening it. She warned that to survive, they must turn off the sonar, otherwise the Kraken would find them again. Since Julia knew so much about the creature, Viktor asked if she could guess where his brother's submarine might be. She explained that octopuses drag prey back to their lairs, which should be near her camp. Their discussion was interrupted by an officer, who reported they had found a clue. He played a recording from silent mode, a repeated knocking sound on metal. Tracking the signal, they confirmed it came from near Julia's camp. This meant survivors were still alive inside the other submarine. Viktor gathered the crew and declared, "Our soldiers are trapped, fighting for their lives. If we don't save them, who will? Don't think I'm doing this just for my brother. I'd do it for any one of you." He then ordered the submarine to head toward the camp. Suddenly, bolts rattled loose, glass cracked, and lights shattered as the submarine sank deeper. They quickly adjusted course upward, but soon realized they had entered an unknown region. Viktor decided to send a mini-submarine to scout the area. Since the previous pilot was injured, he volunteered to go himself, leaving Olshansky in command. Viktor and 2 officers descended in the mini-submarine. As they went deeper, the pressure creaked against the metal hull. For the first time, they were experiencing such crushing depths. They knew if they didn't find something soon, they would have to return. Then they heard a sound and followed it. To their shock, they discovered a graveyard of thousands of sunken ships. Julia's stories were true. Finally, they spotted the other submarine. Its front section was still intact, meaning survivors might be inside. Docking under immense pressure was nearly impossible, but after many attempts, they managed to connect. Viktor donned a diving suit, entered the wreck, and was overjoyed to find the crew alive, including his brother Alexander. He quickly sent the news back to the main submarine, where celebrations erupted. Alexander explained they had gone into silent mode to distract the Kraken, sending signals only occasionally. Viktor loaded as many survivors as possible into the mini-sub, but rescuing everyone would take 2 trips. He chose to stay behind with his brother, while a mechanic accompanied the pilot. They placed a tracker on the wreck to mark its location but then realized the Kraken could follow it, so they shut it off. When the first group arrived safely at the main submarine, Oscar was asked to pilot the second trip since the injured pilot was unfit. Having served on a submarine before, Oscar agreed. Meanwhile, Olshinsky saw on radar that the Kraken had begun moving again. Viktor and Alexander searched the damaged sections for the secret weapons their commanders had requested. After retrieving codes from a safe, they struggled with the broken computer system until Viktor finally got it working. The weapons were still operational. The mini-sub tracked the weapon signal and made its way there, but tension rose in the main submarine as the Kraken loomed closer. To hide, the crew landed the submarine on the seafloor and switched to silent mode. The Kraken hurled a massive stone at them, breaching a compartment and flooding it. Crews doubted how long they could maintain silence. At the same time, Viktor struggled through a blocked pipe to reach the weapons room, while Alexander urged the mini-sub crew to leave without him, choosing to wait for his brother. Eventually, Viktor reached the chamber, loaded the codes into the missiles, and synchronized with Alexander. The weapons needed time to arm. Meanwhile, the Kraken's tentacles wrapped around the submarine. The 2 brothers, reflecting on their old quarrels, reconciled and apologized. Suddenly, the Kraken tore half the submarine apart, luckily, an already empty section. Just as it prepared for another strike, the brothers pressed the launch button together. Water poured into the submarine, forcing Viktor back through the pipe to reunite with Alexander. The brothers climbed the stairs, entered the mini-submarine, and sealed the hatch. With 2 minutes left, the mini-sub failed to launch and began dragging with the wreck. In desperation, Viktor remembered the emergency lever. Pulling it, the mini-sub finally detached. Moments later, the weapons detonated. The shockwave hurled the mini-sub across the sea. On the surface, the main crew waited anxiously, fearing the worst. Just as hope began to fade, bubbles rose, and the mini-sub broke through the waves. Everyone was safe. At last, both brothers reunited with their mother, together again. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.